Hello, and welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Schmidt List. On today's show, I'm talking to Andy Vitale, Director of User Experience for Polaris. We discuss his journey from wrestling, yes, wrestling, to user experience design. We also talk about whether or not UX designers should focus their efforts on one discipline or should they be constantly exploring new areas of design. I truly enjoyed my conversation with Andy, and I know you will too. So first off, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Andy, tell me a little bit about your background. You're currently, what's the title? Director of User Experience for Polaris?
Yeah, or it's actually Director, User Experience.
Ooh,
but
fancy. I like that.
Yeah.
So how did you get into design?
You know, I really fell into design by accident.
Okay.
I went to school for TV and radio the first time. We'll say that. And I ended up not going to class, but I ended up hanging out at the radio station. And my DJ name was Styles Bitchley.
Ooh.
And it was because I watched the Hootie and the Blowfish VHS tape.
Okay.
And that was the name that Darius Rucker, or Sonny, which is the drummer, used at the hotel so people couldn't find him.
One of the Blowfish.
Yeah, one of the Blowfish. So I went by that name, and I just had, like, They Might Be Giants came on the show, like Typo Negative was on the show,
Ooh.
and then I had a pro wrestler on the show, and I watched wrestling as a kid growing up.
Who didn't?
True. So I had a buddy that was like, we'll call him a loser, right? He was living in his mom's basement, dropped out of high school, didn't have a job, living off his family, and really doing nothing. So he came to the TV show with me, or radio show with me, sorry. And I had a wrestler on, and he was like, well, this guy trained me. And I said, I don't know, I'll ask him. So this guy was Chris Michaels, like ECW tag team champion way back in the day.
Yeah.
So I was like, Chris, will you train my friend to be a wrestler like it's his dream? And he's like, no. He's like, I'll train you, and he can come along, but I'm not training him.
Okay.
So my buddy's like, come on, dude, this is my dream. Like, let me do this. I was like, all right, fine, let's do it. So we learned how to wrestle, bad wrestle.
Bad wrestle?
Just bad enough that we could make Chris Michaels look good as he beat us up in his 2-minute squash match before, you know. But along the way, we'd set up the ring and tear it down, and people would teach us. And at some point, I learned that I wasn't really good at that. I wasn't going to make a living. I wasn't trained properly.
Sure.
So I decided to go back to school. And the options for the school I went to were either computer networking or design.
Yep.
And I was like, design makes the most sense. So let's try it. And that was my foray into design.
That was it. And from there?
From there, it was print, early days of the web. And I ended up just working a lot of different jobs. I worked for a company that had an anthrax attack, the first anthrax attack.
Wow.
Right? So the tabloids, our photo editor died.
Okay.
Long, crazy story.
Oh.
I feel like I've told a lot of long, crazy stories already. But I ended up teaching at the school that I went to. And that was the time when, like, UX was becoming a thing. Like, it was always a thing, but it never had a name.
Right. It was being branded.
Exactly. Yep. So things like information architecture, interaction design were coming on, and I was teaching them to my students, and I was trying to practice it, but I wasn't getting, like, real-world application of it.
Sure.
So I decided to stop teaching and go back out and work and apply these things.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so I did that, kind of self-taught. Ended up trying to help. I ended up back at a print shop. South Florida didn't have a great design community. But I convinced the print shop to make this other, like, revenue stream of offering websites and apps and whatever else we could to our customers. So we did that for a little while, and then I was like, hey, you know what? I don't know if this is really for me, this design career. Like, the money's not great.
Yeah.
The jobs aren't great in South Florida. Like, I can work on, like, porn box covers if I want to, but who really wants to do that? So not every day.
Not every day.
So I went back to school for nursing, thought from healthcare tie-in, like this anthrax thing, nursing makes sense. There's a lot of things wrong with healthcare. But I met these friends, and they were like, hey, we're going to start this agency, and let's go ahead and do it. So I was like, all right, I'll try that while I'm in school.
That seems how like most agencies start.
Yeah. I mean, we literally sat in a diner and decided on a name for a whole day. And we got so delirious, I just kept going, pancakes. And we bought that domain name, and we called ourselves the Pancake Movement.
Oh.
I contributed pancakes. My partners, one of them thought, it's not forward sounding enough, so let's add movement to it.
Oh, good thinking.
We did that. We started the Pancake Movement, and our first client was BlackBerry. We did they do in Latin America a lot of like dev tools and networking tools that we helped launch.
Okay.
The job wasn't great, but the money was. So I was like, wow, I love design again.
Yeah.
So that and the passion of the people I worked with was really something that became contagious for me. We hooked up with an incubator. We did a lot of startup work, a lot of app work. That was kind of like I was playing the UX role there.
Right.
Still wasn't happy with being self-taught. So I decided to go back to school to get some foundational knowledge in that and got my master's in an online program. It was good. I got to read a lot of books. And I had already known the design side of things, so it wasn't really challenging for me.
Right.
Then from there, we broke up as an agency, another long story for another day. And from there, I ended up at Office Depot. And I was the only UX designer on the mobile team at a time when mobile was really hot. So things like Apple, it was called Passbook back then. Now it's Apple Wallet, Express Checkout, registration, in-store pickup. We did an augmented reality thing with the band One Direction. So you walk into Office Depot and you hold your phone up to this folder, and all of a sudden Liam is singing a song to you.
Aw.
It's kind of cool. It was ahead of its time. This was like 2011, 2012.
Sure.
So
yeah.
that was kind of cool. Just ended up series of different moves from there. I ended up at 3M.
Yeah.
Helped grow a design team from 2 to 22. And now I'm at Polaris.
Let's imagine there's another design leader or somebody who wants to be a design leader who's listening to the show. What sort of advice can you give them on how to grow a team? What are some of the pitfalls to look out for?
Sure. So really when you grow a team, you have to prove that you're providing some sort of value to the business. What I've done in the past is just kind of show examples, show little quick wins. So take on a pilot project, show the results, show how we've increased productivity by X amount, just different KPIs that you can attach to it. From there, people are generally interested in working with you. They can speak those wins up the ladder or even across, if you can have an executive speaking for you, that's getting people excited about wanting to work with you. That's one way. I would say that really becoming part of the overall process would be another one. So designers have a process, and the business has a process, and there's a marketing process, and there's a engineering process. There's so many processes. There really needs to be one, just like there needs to be one vocabulary. When you're on that same page, then you're really embedded in that process.
What about politics?
Right. So politics is huge, right? So really, there are different layers of people that all want to claim ownership to things. You have to understand there are different agendas. So the marketing manager might be worried about profits, and the brand manager about experience or overall impression of the brand.
Right.
So these people are all going to be territorial over pieces that they have, and it's really good to have authenticity and transparency with them and have this clear communication. So design can be used as a storytelling tool also. It's really hard to walk in and tell people that what they're doing is wrong. They don't want to hear it. They shut down immediately.
Right.
So if we can use design to help them tell their story, it allows us to influence that. So I sit down with them and I say, what's your vision? Like, help me understand your vision. From there, I've got this relationship I'm building with them. Let me help you visualize that.
Yeah.
But I'm also injecting as much influence into it as I can. Then when we're in a room with other people, we're on the same page. So people, especially middle management, that seems to be like the biggest political ice block that there is.
Sure.
When they see this top down and bottom up approach at the same time, this sandwich strategy, they called it at 3M.
Okay.
When there's that alignment, they're like, wait, I'm not on the same page. Everybody else is. So they immediately jump on board.
Right. So, yeah. You kind of set the pace. Right.
Exactly.
Now that makes a lot of sense because I definitely have been challenged by some people, not just in design, but in development in the past of why should I have to show them what I do? They should just figure out what I do and have respect for my position and what I'm doing, and why do I have to go and figure out what they are up to and align with them, right? And I've definitely coached people before, especially on the design side. I mean, we talk about empathy for users so much. I mean, what about empathy for the business side?
It's true. And empathy is like a sore subject for me right now. I hear a lot of designers talk about empathy, but when I don't know how authentic that is, because they walk in and they say, I'm a designer, I'm here to solve your problems. And that's that designer ego a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's intended to be that way. I think that designers are naturally curious and want to help and solve problems. And they're also very collaborative at the same time, or try to be.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about empathy, we have to make sure that what we're saying actually matches what we're thinking, because we might give off the wrong impression.
That's a good point. And so, if you are, and you've led teams, and you've built design teams, and you're currently in the process of building a new team, what are some of the important lessons you've learned from how to hire designers?
Sure. So the hiring process is really interesting to me, especially as I hear different people talk about, I only look at a resume for 5 seconds and I turn it down. And I'm the opposite. I invest as much time as I can into building a team. So I will look at every resume. I will stalk them on LinkedIn. I will look through their portfolio. And then I will set up a call with them and somebody on my team. So because I'm new in my role, I want to make sure that we hire someone that's capable of doing the work that we have. So who better to talk to than someone on the team that's doing a lot of that work or has been doing it?
For sure.
So they're the first round. If they think that person is worth talking to beyond that, which, I mean, people are. So
yeah,
I like to invest time in people.
Yeah.
So then I'll have another call with them. I'd like that to be Skype or something, Zoom, just face-to-face almost.
As best as possible.
Without having them come into the office, right?
Yep.
And my conversation with them is more about, I've already seen your work. I've had somebody that's walked through some of your projects. So now I want to get to know you, like what motivates you, understand the person. And what I look for are very simple things. Someone that still kind of motivates me, someone I think I can learn from that's better than me at certain things. Then I want to make sure they're not an asshole, right?
Right.
I mean, it's really difficult to work with people like that.
Yeah.
So those are like the two key areas.
Yeah.
And then I like to be inspired by people. So I want to know that, I guess, what drives them. So different people are driven by different things and see different versions of success. Some people are really concerned with work-life balance.
Yep.
Some people just want to build a portfolio. So I want to get to the bottom of that relationship as quick as I can, as transparent as I can, because if you want to come work with me or for me, however we want to talk about that, but you just want to build your portfolio and leave in 2 years, I'm okay with that, as long as I know going in. I will put you on as much work as I can, help you build that portfolio, and at the end of the 2 years, like, great, I'll help you find what's next for you.
Well, and I think that's good, because you can also build a coaching plan and career plan around that motivation, right? I mean, one of the things that I see a lot of is people in that management role are not planning out that far for their staff. Tell me about how you approach building out a career path for designers, or how you would coach somebody to do that.
Yeah, so right now I'm working on that. So one of the things that I helped work on at 3M was the career framework. We had a talent coordinator that worked with HR to really figure out this growth plan for designers. At Polaris, it's still kind of murky. So that was one of the first things that I did when I came on board. One was assess the talent. 2, assess the projects that they're on and where they play in those. And then 3, like, how do we help create this career growth plan for them? So I took a look at all of the job descriptions that we had. I'm lining them up with what the industry looks like. And I'm recreating most of them. A lot of them are like interactive designer and like senior interactive designer or like UX designer. And that's great. But you have to get to know people and see what those coachable moments are and understand where they see themselves going in that career path so that you could create that for them. So it's got to go beyond like junior designer, senior designer, lead designer.
Just titles.
Yeah, what track are they on? Are they on the management track or the individual contributor track? Like, those are great to kind of communicate to the rest of the business who they are, but they're not great for helping people know what they need to do to get to that next level. So I'm assessing the team now and working on like growth plans for them.
If I'm a designer, maybe